Hi, and welcome to the Astrology and Tarot Show's special video about the departure of Uranus from Taurus. Jessica Adams is going to look at how this has affected us in the years from 2018 to 2026 and what we can expect as it exits and Uranus enters the sign of Gemini. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for coming along. So we are going to need some recovery time from Uranus and Taurus, especially if you have anything in Taurus in your birth chart, in your second house of money and real estate, possessions, business, insurance, and so on. Even if you don't have anything in Taurus in your chart, we are all collectively affected by the end chapter. Now, Uranus was in Taurus with us 2018 to 2026. It finishes in the last week of April 2026, around the 25th of the month, depending on your time zone. So the 25th of April is the end of lightning strikes really on your bank balance since 2018, on the world's banking and currency since 2018, and don't we know it? Taurus rules bull markets, it is the bull, and it also rules gold bullion. So we all do need to recover. If you've ever hit yourself on an electric fence, which I did once, never forgot it. This is in Tasmania when I was a teenager. The jolt and the kick from the electric fence, you really need to recover from that. And similarly, if you've ever had an electric shock from anything, even a hairdryer, you need to ground. They always say ground yourself, and that's what we're all going to have to do as we go into May. There are some end game decisions as well. Ceres is in Taurus, so there will be a deal, a bargain, a compromise, a sharing agreement in the month of May that seems to put the seal on it all for you. I'll talk a bit more about that at the end of this video when we look at the chart. But let's go on to the next image, which I think says it all about this cycle. So Uranus rules electricity and it rules shock. It rules electric shock, like being thrown off a fence. And here we have the most shocking thing of all. Prince Andrew is no longer Prince Andrew. He is Mountbatten, Mr. Mountbatten Windsor. Now, Uranus is always about the end of a system, as well as being a shock. It's always about a revolution, and it's usually the revolution that liberates and sets you free and allows you to become independent. So the Andrew scandal, and it's more than a scandal, it's a crisis, has actually liberated everybody in the Commonwealth, including the United Kingdom, from having to play by the old rules of the old system. Now, that system was run by Taurus, the late Queen, and when Andrew became the focus of this major inquiry into the Jeffrey Epstein world, we discovered that actually you can be a trade envoy, Taurus rules trade, and be corrupt. You can be corrupted. And in a minute, I'll look at the other end of Taurus, which is Scorpio, which is sex, death, and money. You can also bring that into it with Andrew. But in any case, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth have been given a jolt from which they probably won't recover, at least not for another 80 years until the next cycle. And this lightning bolt is and was Prince Andrew, and it's not over yet, not by a long shot. In fact, it won't be until July that we really start to see the truth come out about Epstein, according to the astrology. Let's have a look at the next picture. This is a great image of Bitcoin because it's neon. Uranus has ruled electricity for over 2,000 years, since the Romans decided that he could produce two kinds of lightning, sheet lightning and fork lightning. He was discovered as a planet in 1781 with a new invention, the telescope. And electricity was just starting to make itself known in the world of science. It was just starting to become a reality. In fact, something called animal electricity was discovered in the laboratory in the same year that Herschel found Uranus, the planet. So there's a bit of correlation there. Now, here we have a currency that uses as much electricity every year worldwide as the entire nation of Thailand. So every astrologer who was watching Uranus go into Taurus in 2018 took one look at crypto and went, that's it. And thanks to that, we also know that we are going to see the end of the most unpredictable currency cycle of our lives, Because if Uranus in Taurus is Bitcoin, if it's the number one thing that shocked the bull market, it shocked gold bullion, then when the cycle ends on the 25th of April, for whatever reason, the constant zigzag and the constant shock, 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 up, down of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency is going to be halted. And we don't know why yet. It's typical of this transit that you don't find out until it happens. Uranus in Taurus is the stagecoach overturning in the ditch and throwing you sideways. It is the rug being pulled. It is always anything that turns sideways or on its head. And it usually happens out of the blue. And classically, the last thing that you ever expected is the first thing that happens. So if you are a Bitcoiner, you need to watch the astrology. Let's have a look at the next picture. I talked about recovering from Uranus and Taurus. It's been in your second house of personal income. So when you look at your birth chart using modern astrology, Taurus rules the second house, which is your money, your shopping, your possessions, your valuables, your house or your apartment, your garden, your land, your charity, your business, your tax bill, and so on. At the other end of the horoscope, you can see Scorpio rules the eighth house, and that's his, hers, ours, theirs. So classically, it's about your partner and your shared bank account or real estate. It is about your family, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, and so on, your children, and the will, the legacy, or the inheritance that binds those generations together, that binds those people together. So because we've been having this second house transit, if you actually have Taurus and Scorpio factors in your chart, which many people do, then 2018 to 26 for you has not just been about your life budget changing, and it has been about direct challenges to our life budget, their life budget, that inheritance, or that mortgage. And the most obvious example of that is 2020. COVID landed. It was predicted with astrology a year before it happened. It was predicted to the date, actually, January 10, 2020. And what COVID did was turn the known world economy upside down. So that may have been the year, if you do have Taurus factors, that you really felt it the most. Maybe you were furloughed, maybe you lost your job, maybe your partner had to give up his or her job, work from home, all that stuff came in, as well as the massive shock to the share markets. So we know all about the second house. What's happening now, though, is almost like somebody leaving a building. So if you were to visualize Uranus as this highly eccentric, unusual, unorthodox, unconventional, unpredictable human being who'd moved into your house between 2018 and 2026 and was forever turning the whole thing upside down, turning the room upside down, every few months, him exiting is like the door slamming. On the 25th of April, give it to the 26th, maybe as early as the 24th, depending on your time zone, you are going to metaphorically hear the door slam and he's gone. Crazy times are over, whether you gain from it or whether you lost from it. And some people did very well from crypto and the NFT market. Those wild, electrifying, shocking times are over. Let's have a look at the next picture. So there's the eighth house. Uranus in Taurus has been opposite your eighth house of joint finance, typically partnership money and real estate or family money and real estate. So this may have explained what has happened to marriages and partnerships that you know, and also family wills and inheritance. So this is, again, using the royal family, because they have birth time charts, we can rely on the data. Unlike other famous people, we can't rely on Donald Trump's data, surprisingly, but we can rely on the royal family. And if you look at the charts for things like the Queen passing away, Andrew and Sarah being given the corgis, that was pretty meaningful. And if you look at the rift between Harry and Charles, the marriage of Harry and Meghan and their charity interests, you're getting a super, super eighth house story. Charles is a Scorpio. Okay, that's all you need to know. Bill Gates is a Scorpio. His marriage has broken up under the shadow of Epstein. That's a very, very expensive divorce. So these are two famous examples of what's happened to people who have factors in Scorpio in their eighth house of our money and yours and my money, real estate, and so on. Inevitably, because it's been an opposition, you get polar opposites. Let's have a look at the next picture. So, yeah, the message with this particular Zoom is at every stage, the tarot has told the story of Uranus in your life. And there's a story in your life that's changed the most. I'm going to show you, or we're going to show you a sequence of cards next. When you get to a card and you go, that's me, that's absolutely what happened to me, make a note of it. There may actually be two or three cards. And then at the very end of the Zoom, you can go to my website and draw one tarot card which will show you the way to get closure from what happened to you. Because, as I've said, shock takes some time to get over. And even though the shock might have happened to you 6 years ago, it still has a kind of a wave, an ongoing ripple effect. And now that Uranus and Taurus is going, you are in a really good position to really not just close the door on that cycle, but make amends with it, figure out what it meant to you, what it means to you now, and what you can do with what's left of it. So let's have a look at these cards. The Pentacles suite in the tarot is always about money. Some people call it coins. So this is the Ace of Pentacles. So if this happened to you, then there was a large amount of money that came from nowhere. You may have inherited, or you may have found that Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency paid you an enormous profit very quickly. So all of Uranus is in this card. There's oxygen and space there because whenever Uranus comes along, you're liberated from who or what was tying you up or cluttering the landscape. So there's a tremendous amount of bandwidth there. There's a kind of freedom here that wasn't there before. You can even see the way that Pamela's drawn those white flares around the hand. There's a kind of electricity around the hand. In fact, that might as well be the Bitcoin symbol from 1909. Of course, she had no idea Bitcoin was coming, but she was a psychic illustrator. And here we have the Ace of Pentacles showing you what you did or didn't do with an enormous large sum of money that was almost like pennies from heaven. Maybe you went traveling with it. Maybe you used it to renovate. Maybe you went to further your ambitions with it. But it has a lasting impact on people who went through it because, of course, there's always this thought at the back of your mind, could it happen to me again? And that, of course, is why people bought into crypto and NFT. Once they'd been through it, they thought, oh, maybe it could happen a second time. And sometimes it didn't. Okay, so on to the next card, the Two of Pentacles. This is a classic Uranus in Taurus illustration. It shows the instability of Donald Trump's tariffs on world trade, and it shows what happened to the world economy during COVID. Those are cruise ships, which were basically grounded for at least a year and sometimes more. As a theme in the card, it shows you that you were affected by what you could not control in your country or in the world economy. So there you are trying madly to juggle and get it right. Uranus is so unpredictable. You just don't know when the next wave is coming from. And this would have had a lasting impact on your feelings about security and stability. You may have felt quite ungrounded while it was going on. You may have put a lot of energy into trying to cope with it. And along the way, you might have also learned, I think, about the eighth house of your chart. So if you did have anything in Scorpio, or your partner did, or a family member did, that would have impacted the relationship between you and them quite strongly. So part of the instability is juggling and coping, but in the light of the other party, the other person, or the other people in the situation. The Scorpio in that card is shown by the red. Okay, the Three of Pentacles is the next card. This is also a classic Uranus in Taurus symbol because here we have the unexpected, the unpredictable, the unknown, the unconventional, all the U words. If you look at the two people towards the right-hand side of the card, neither of them are equipped to look for money. The money is hidden with the Three Pentacles at the center of the card. This is a treasure hunt, but you don't know if there's any treasure or not. The jester is holding a map that looks like a cartoon. It's not really a map at all. And the jester, the comedian, has no interest really or ability for accounting, taxation, business, insurance, and all the rest of it. Never mind the share market. And next to them is the monk. Now, monks take a vow of poverty. Religious, spiritual people don't really understand money. So the two least equipped people in the world to help on the mission to find the money, if it's there or if it's not, the assets, if they're there or if they're not, we're in charge of this highly unpredictable quest. The third person in the card that you can see on the left-hand side is falling short of the mark. They're having to stand on a bench in order to be able to see into the darkness. They're too short for the task. If you also look at their hand, and Pamela's hands are always quite interesting, that's a ham-fisted approach. They're not really across this. So it was all a bit, whoa. It's too funny. As I said that, the light on my laptop actually fell over. That's a bit of synchronicity for you. It's all a bit like, whoa, not sure, not quite sure. But here's the kicker. For some of you, it worked. Despite everybody being unconventional, despite the situation being highly unusual, it paid dirt. And you collectively, the three of you, found the money or the buried treasure. The Four of Pentacles is the next card. This is really somebody who has a fair bit of Cancer in their chart. So this may have been you or a key person. Maybe it was, for example, a businessman, a banker, your partner, your family member, and so on. In the background, you can see the real estate that Cancer is famous for. Cancer rules property. And the symbol that you can see hidden in the card in the center with the two arms is the Cancer, the crab symbol. And Cancerian types, people with planets in Cancer, tend to hang on quite tightly to what makes them feel secure. So the thing about this card is it shows you that was a complete mistake, an assumption that if I just hang on very tightly to the money, everything will be okay and stay where it was. It just didn't happen like that. In fact, this character, which may be you or the other person, is floating high in the sky as if they've just been blown up, or in fact had an electric shock, and they're still hanging on. They're still hanging on. In the background, you've got the real estate market. So the big story for you would have been the apartment or the house, the mortgage, the interest rates, the value of a property going up or the value of a property going down. And the big lesson about this is that no matter how tightly you cling, sometimes you cannot control what happens around you, and you need to be hip to that and be flexible enough should it happen again. The Five of Pentacles is the next card. So this is about illness. This is about the need for a doctor, a surgeon. It's about depression. It's about anxiety. It's about the toll that life takes on us. And this may have been you, or it may have been one or two people close to you. The key to it all was money. And money is shown in the stained glass window as the potential. What's happening here in this card is that even though these two people could be liberated and set free, it's not happening. Excuse me. So therefore, there was a moment in this situation when it was now or never. The two people concerned could have changed their angle, changed their attitude, found the money, whether it was a bank lending it to them, a government department giving it to them, a family member or a friend giving it to them, or they just kept going and they missed their chance. I think that crossroads would have really affected you if you're picking up on this card. Did you go and get the health insurance, or did you intervene in the lives of these people who desperately needed medical care? Or did it not happen? Either way, that moment has gone, it's past, but it would have had a really big effect on you. I would also expect you to have Virgo factors in your birth chart, or the people concerned to have Virgo factors. Let's have a look at the Six of Pentacles. So are you the receiver here, the grateful receiver, the grateful recipient, or are you the rather amply endowed donor? Are you the paymaster? Are you the soul of generosity here, the fat cat who can give, or are you the very, very needy person, or even one part of a couple there? Holding out the hands, there is Uranus in this card because, of course, it's liberating to receive. If you have been in debt or in hard times, even if you've needed medical care, not being able to afford it, there's a bandage on that head. To be given money or donated money or paid sets you free from that. You can get new clothes. You don't have to be in that awful position that Pamela was drawing in 1909. At the same time, if you're the giver, then there's something liberating about shedding money that you've got, so much that you don't know really what to do with. There's also the scales of Libra in the card. So there is a principle at stake here, and it's about justice, what's fair or what's legal. In the background, you can see real estate or property towards the right-hand side of the card. And also in the background, you can see some family trees. So that's also very much part of the story, even though it's not front and center. So if you were in this position, maybe you were paid by your employer because you couldn't go to work because of COVID, for example, in 2020, or whether you were in a position to help other people who needed help, there was a kind of a freedom that came with it. And again, that has a lasting effect on you. Seven of Pentacles is the next card. Watching and waiting for the money to grow. So this is the very picture of an investor or a saver or somebody who has a lot of irons in the fire and is hoping that they all pay off. Of course, you may actually be a farmer. Taurus rules farming. It rules farming. It also rules slow development and cultivation of promising income. The surprise or the shock really is that there's money at this person's feet that they didn't realize was there. So this may have actually happened to you or to a person who's central to your life. I would expect it to be you, but you suddenly realized, oh, there's money I didn't know that was there that I can do something with. And you can also see the fact that there's a bit of instability with all this saved or invested money in that it's kind of falling. Money doesn't grow on trees, but here we have an attempt at a money tree, but it's not growing in a stable direction. It's actually one jolt and it could all kind of tumble out. So again, you were at a crossroads with this, and it really depends on what you chose to do. Did you do something unexpected? Did you suddenly get rid of all your saved or hoarded assets and free yourself up and free the situation up? Did you find the money that you didn't see or you didn't know was there, and so on? The other thing that's really quite interesting about this card is that Pamela's drawn two different coloured feet. So one boot is a different colour brown to the other boot. So there's something quirky, unique about this. Uranus is all the you words, and you or somebody else was in that frame of mind when Uranus was going through. Let's have a look at the Eight of Pentacles. So at first glance, this doesn't look like Uranus at all. This looks like steady Eddie. Taurus is productive. Taurus is patiently working hard, delivering the same product or the same end result or the same service every single time and being uniformly rewarded for it. So this is really like working for Wedgwood Pottery and churning out Wedgwood, or it's like making hit singles and so on. But what's really Uranian about this situation that you may have gone through, and I think it's probably you, is that at a certain point you also had a choice to just down tools. What this transit showed you was that you have to put a price on work. So Uranus going through Taurus may have been picking up your Virgo factors or your Capricorn factors, both of which are all work and career. And as a result of that, you would have been asked to evaluate what it actually cost you financially to do this day in, day out. There's a kind of predictability about this, which may have taken you to the point where you thought, hang on a minute, I'm not going to do this anymore. And that may have happened to you, or you may have felt the feelings and just kept going, which people also do. But this is another crossroads card. You had a moment there when you were shown that you could very clearly stop doing this or continue. And why would you have continued? Because of the property or the holiday accommodation that you can see on the sharp left-hand side of the card. Clearly, that is a mortgage that has to be paid, or maybe an Airbnb that you've got in mind for your holiday. But that crossroads has also left an impression on you. The Nine of Pentacles is the next card. So everything in the garden is lovely. This is the woman who has more than enough money. And if you're a man, this woman is front and center to you. So it may be your wife or your girlfriend, your boss, for example. And again, we've got shades of the unpredictable here. It's quite interesting to see Uranus in this card because at any moment, this woman could do the last thing that you expect and start chucking the money around. So it's not enough to say that she's sitting pretty. She's got that kind of moment before the storm feeling about her. And even though anybody looking at this card would say, why would you throw money away? Or why would you suddenly spend it or give it or donate it? This woman has a kind of tension about her that's typical Uranus. Uranus always arrives just before a storm. So there's a build-up of tension in the air, and then it all goes off at the same time. So again, a crossroads. Did you or she get to the point where you just thought, to hell with it? I've had enough of being wealthy. I'm going to spend this or give it away. Or was it a moment whose time passed and she or you went, oh no, it's okay. I'll keep going. I'll ignore that. There's some other things in this card that you can see the family tree in the background, and also you can see a property towards the right hand side of the card. And lots of you will have seen the snail at the front. Now, the snail's quite interesting because something or someone was moving at a snail's pace throughout. And only you can really say what that was. Okay, the Ten of Pentacles is the next card. Here we have money, lots of money, and we have property, and we have three generations. So we have the younger generation represented by the child, and then we have the middle generation represented by either a couple or perhaps two siblings. And then we have the older generation represented by the old man, who's a grandfather or a great grandfather figure. And the eighth house, which I've been talking about, was absolutely opposed by Taurus. And this is an eighth house picture. So what you've got here is the classic instability of Uranus. Uranus is showing all the money up in the air. It's like juggling. All the balls are in the air. There's really no grounding here. There's no security. There's nothing to make it stable. And you or others reached a crossroad. A typical example would be an inheritance. So I used the example of the royal family before, who are a good one to use because we have their birth times. And for all the world, this might be Charles over there in the corner. That may be Meghan and Harry in the centre, and that may be Lilibet, perhaps, with one of their dogs, and maybe this is California. So you can project onto it that way. But this is for you, maybe, and perhaps for people in your family or maybe your partner. And what you take away from this situation is the fact that if everything's still up in the air, if the money is still up in the air, then in May and June 2026, it's time to stabilize that. From the Ten of Pentacles, we go to the next card, and here we begin what they call the court card. So this is the page, always a younger person, could be a boy or a girl, a young man or a young woman, and there's certainly a lot of freedom there. What will I do with the money? Will I spend it on an unfinished project? Will I use it to further my ambition? Will I take it to the family and figure out what to do with it in terms of the family tree? Again, you get that kind of tension, pre-storm feeling with the page that's typical of Uranus. So this younger person, who may have been your son, your daughter, may have been a younger business colleague, had all the freedom and all the space and was entirely unpredictable. And that's the key to it. What did they do? Because they could have done anything there. And what they ended up doing has profoundly affected you and your opinion of them. This is even more important if it was, in fact, your son, your daughter, or maybe a much younger partner. But that particular moment that you hit with them and knowing that you can never really know with them has had a lasting effect. Okay, so the next card from the page, we go through the court cards and we find ourselves with the Knight. When I was asked who would win the US election, the Knight of Pentacles turned up, the money man. And a lot of people said to me, it's Elon Musk. Donald won it, but Elon won it. And maybe there's some truth in that. In any case, the money man took the White House. Kamala Harris was never going to win. And this money man was also part, maybe, of your Uranus in Taurus transit. Now, the thing about the Knight is there's so much covered up that there's always potential for a shock when everything is revealed. And if we use the analogy of Elon Musk, everything was revealed. He was never going to be a stayer in the White House. He was a player in the White House, okay? So whoever this younger man was, and it may have been you if you are a younger male, more likely should be a son, perhaps, maybe an employer, a staff member, maybe a boyfriend. Whoever he was to you, there was that kind of anything could be revealed at any moment feeling, quite similar to the page. So just having somebody around who you were never really quite sure of, who was never honest and open up and upfront, who was never fully revealed to you, and who at any time could have galloped off or taken the helmet off and shown you who he really was, or thrown the money to somebody else who was waiting. It's got that kind of tension about it that, again, has affected your relationship with them. Now, if you are a man, a younger man, it has definitely affected your relationship with yourself. Your ideas about yourself have been formed by that crossroads that you hit with money, and almost not being entirely sure of who you are or who you were or what you were going to do next has affected you too. Okay. So the Queen is the next card that we look at. No, I beg your pardon, it's the King. Sometimes you do the King first and the Queen. Today I decided to do King then Queen. Here we have Taurus hidden in the card, Taurus the bull on the throne. So you have a classic moment waiting to happen here. You can either be choked by what you've invested in, you can either be choked by the vineyard, you can be agricultural investments can choke you, you can ossify, or you can break free. And this was a real moment for you if you're a man. But for most of the people looking at this card, it was your husband or your boyfriend, it was your boss. It was all sorts of financiers in your life, your accountant, maybe, perhaps the tax man, but more likely to be personal. So this person is front and center in your life, the King of Pentacles, prides himself quietly on having done so much with what he was born with. He was either born with a plastic spoon in his mouth, like the Who song, or he was born with assets, from boyhood, really. He was given the golden lollipop as a baby, so he inherited. But in any case, whether he's hung up on the fact that he was born with nothing and has made it by himself, or whether he inherited and is also aware of that, you've got somebody that feels that they are here to keep and hang on to what they've got, what they've invested in, and what they've made. You can see the real estate or the property towards the right-hand side of the card. And Uranus comes along like a lightning strike in the sky, and suddenly everything changes in the blink of an eye. You simply cannot be the King of Pentacles and get through COVID and get through 2020 and keep on keeping on, because the share market explodes. So I should have thought 2020 was maybe one of the years that had the impact on the King. If you are the King, what it did to you, you can see Taurus hidden in the card, was it changed your values. It altered the value that you place on freedom, space, autonomy, room to move, and it altered the value that you place on security, permanence, stability. Because, of course, the price that you pay for stability and permanence is that you get choked by life. You are no longer actually free to move. If the King was there for another year or two, you can see that vineyard gradually creeping up and covering his face entirely until he's totally tied to the throne. So that's a big, big card to look at, and it may have quite personal meaning for you, especially if you have Taurus factors, all this man does and did. And now we go to the Queen. Well, there's the sex in the corner, the rabbit. This is a picture of somebody, perhaps you if you're a woman, who went through a classic Taurus Scorpio second house, eighth house opposition. So I would expect you or the key person to also have Scorpio factors. So sex is never very far from the Queen of Pentacles world. She can ignore it, she can be fixated on the money, but it's only a matter of time before it intrudes, okay, on the bean counting. This was a period when there was actually a decent sum of money for you or for her. Let's assume it's you. And there's quite enough there that you could call a worthy investment, or a very appropriate expenditure, really, given what the Queen has to spend it on, because we've got a garden here, we've got the environment, we've got ambition shown by the mountains in the background. If you look at the throne, you'll get some more clues. You can see a baby's face hidden in her throne. So perhaps having a child, maybe paying for a child to grow up, maybe paying for adult children. And then if you look at the goat, which is hidden at the front, that's a bit of a symbol of ambition. So I mentioned the mountain as well, ambition. This is somebody who is founded on ambition as well. So what did you do? Or what did she do? And what part did sex play in it in the end? What came out of that continues to affect you and her, and very much the relationship. And the final thing to say about the Queen is that there's an evaluation process going on here. What is this sum of money worth to me? It may be $10,000, it may be £100, it may be $10 million, whatever it was. There's a kind of a reckoning period here. What am I going to do with it? What is it worth to me? What am I going to spend it on? Am I going to keep it? And what am I going to do about that rabbit? Okay, so that's the Pentacles suite in the tarot, and you may have had a number of cards that spoke to you. A number of cards may have been part of that long cycle because it's been with you since 2018, or it may have been just one that really resonated with you, in which case I would expect you to have had a slow moving outer planet in Taurus or a node in your birth chart. And maybe you were born with Saturn in Taurus, or maybe you were born with a North Node or South Node in Taurus. It's on that level. Okay, so we have a new moon coming up, which is really important. It's the new beginning in May, which really, really ends it all for you. So let's have a look at the chart. Let's have a look at this May 16 new moon, which you will feel on the 15th or the 17th, depending on your time zone. This chart is set for Saturday, the 16th of May, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Los Angeles. So we could say around the 16th, it's a new beginning for you and for the whole financial world, actually. And this is really the definite end of everything that we've been through. It's a deal. It's a compromise, it's a bargaining agreement. It's going to be global, but it will affect you personally. So there may be a ripple effect for you and your bank account, or you may just be doing your own thing anyway. But find that it runs in parallel with what's happening on the share markets and with trade and with tariffs. The reason that it's a deal, if you look at the chart, you can see number 2 for the second house. The sun is at 25 Taurus, the moon is at 25 Taurus, so it's a new beginning, it's a new moon. But Ceres is also at 25 Taurus. She looks like a question mark in the chart. That's highly unusual. And Ceres is always about a 50-50 agreement, or usually a split of thirds. And it's about control and it's about power. So that's when you will really know that that was then and this is now. It's almost as if the whole of May has to be spent recovering from what happened between 2018 and 2026. But also, as you get towards this new moon, understanding that it's a green light. So I've got the dog interfering with me, sorry. The dog's being Uranian, unpredictable. What we have here also is the Mercury on the MC at 28. So this is actually about Los Angeles per se. It's about LA and it's about LA's finances, but never mind that particular story. This is most importantly about Uranus at 28 Taurus and its semi-sextile Mars at 28 Aries. This might be picking up your chart. If you have anything at 28, you're going to feel it. If you have anything at 25, you're really going to feel it. And if you have anything at 25 Taurus or Scorpio, this is a really major compromise for you. Ceres is always about an agreement to differ. And to make the compromise work, you have to park the emotions at the door because there's usually quite strong feelings. So typically the kind of strong feelings that you get between in-laws, for example, between husband and wife, between mother and child, it's on that level. Even though it's supposed to be about numbers and about money or about real estate or business, it's actually about really, really powerful feelings. And it's also about the question of, well, who's got the power? Where's the power now? How are we going to share the power? But the arrangement's not going to work if emotions are let in. So it has to be strictly business. That's the big, big message about this new moon. If you look around the horoscope, you can also see, apart from Ceres, the moon and the sun in Taurus, the MC, which is just LA, Mercury, the messenger of the gods at 28 Taurus. So this is about the message. This is about the news. It's about a phone call to you, perhaps an email. It's about picking up the newspaper or turning on the internet and realizing, oh, this is going to affect everything. And this is going to affect all of us. And the funny thing is, Uranus is just out. You can see him there at 1 Gemini in the 3rd house. What this is the really biggest end of the older system, and it goes beyond the royal family and Prince Andrew and tax, which everybody in the Commonwealth pays for them to go on tour, you know, or everybody in the UK pays for them to live there. It goes beyond the institution of monarchy. It goes even beyond Donald and his tariffs, you know. It's actually about petrol. It's about oil. And we've known that this has been coming for quite some time. It's the rise of the electric vehicle. It's about Tesla cars, but it's about really affordable electric transport. It's about different kinds of transport that we haven't seen before. Gemini rules how you get from A to B. It rules short journeys and commuting. It rules domestic flight, and it also rules the car, the bus. And there's Uranus just landed there in the third house. So again, we're talking on the 20th of April. So of course the share market is up in arms over what's happening with oil and petrol. But what we're being told by this chart is, well, actually, it's going to be about that. And if you invested in that direction, if you opened yourself up to investing that way, you were completely in the ballpark astrologically. I've been writing about Uranus and Gemini for a few years now. We knew that it was coming, but of course we didn't know why it was coming. But here is this chart that says this is an epic, epic deal globally, and it's going to affect all of us. The final thing to say is that I have this great book here, The Gods of Change by Howard Susport, which I'm going to hold close to my face like that so it doesn't flare. Now, Howard was one of the great astrologers of the 20th century. I'm looking for when this book was published. It came out in 1989. So that was when I was beginning as a professional astrologer. And this is what he has to say about Uranus in the second house, which is where it was in your birth chart. The most obvious effect of this transit is to change our financial situation and the way that we relate to the world of money and matter in general. In other words, our values change. There could be an increase in income, a sudden windfall, or money coming to us through unexpected sources. Sometimes the reversal of fortune works the other way and our income takes a drop. A number of people who have come to me for readings, he wrote, while transiting Uranus was moving through their second house, felt that they left jobs they didn't want in order to begin something new, which promised greater stimulation, even if this shift had meant a lower salary. So that was coming up in the tarot too. And remember, Howard wrote this in 1989, years before Uranus and Taurus ever got there. He wrote, how we earn a living is likely to change at this time. Many people become dissatisfied working for others and start their own business, or they're fed up with a 9 to 5 routine and they go freelance, or they take up employment with unusual hours. If we have been financially dependent on another person, this transit often activates a desire to earn money and support ourselves in our own right. So that's how it's support us. The Gods of Change, Pain, Crisis, and the Transits of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, published by Arcana at the end of the 80s. So quite what Howard would have, I've got massive chills here, so I expect he's probably here. Hi, Howard. Whatever you experienced during that transit, and the tarot cards would have told you, I'm going to finish by saying you can go to my website now, draw a tarot card, or draw more than one, which will help you to gain closure with what you've been through, particularly near that new moon, which is so epic. That new moon is like a green light saying, that was then, this is now, now go. That's behind you. It's never going to happen again in your adult lifetime. So if you draw a tarot card from my website at jessicaadams.com and you focus on that, how am I best enabled to achieve closure? And just make a note. It may have been 3 or 4 things that happened to you. It may have been just one, but it will help you. If you are a paid subscriber, this is all free, but if you're a paid subscriber, we will have a video on that new moon, and Alicia and I will walk you through it for your decan. So come along to that if you're a paying subscriber. See you next time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Yes. And if you do join us for our new moon video, you'll also be able to post questions to Jessica about the new moon and that new beginning. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you for that next video.
Thank you.